is actually revealed. And here's the deal with this New Age jive and all the things that are going around, right? Everybody's telling you, oh yeah, it's there, can't you see it? And I guess they see it. And I'm thinking they must not be seeing it clearly, or maybe not really seeing it at all, because if they can see it, the meaning of a true magician is first to be a seer, and then to be a conjurer. If I see something like, like Krishna would say, here, Arjuna, take a look at that, you're going to be able to see it too, because there it is, right? Anyway, it is by, essentially, our recognition and acquiescence, if we can see this thing. In other words, the people that are doing this now, they're apparently telling everyone, look, but they're not being able to see it, because nobody's really seen what happened. And so there's a failure, all right? But if we can see it, it is by our recognition and our acquiescence into this higher relativity. Our part's relation to the whole, and through that, our relation to each other, that transcending separateness, that a greater ideal society in God is possible. And it is out of this recognition of this higher relativity, and when this higher relativity is communicated, begins to be communicated, then it is this communication that becomes our communion. And this communion, which is actually between separateness and divinity, gives birth to the body of the child, which is the result or issue of that union. All right? And when this is collectively fulfilled, it is synonymous with the redemption of our prior world reality. I possess this key, and I possess this vision, and I didn't really ask for it. All I knew is I made a commitment, and as Goethe said, then Providence moved to, and this woman and I basically fell madly in love with one another. And she took a basic idiot, with just naive as could possibly be, and led me by the hand, and has given me everything I require in order to champion her world. And so my final plea is ultimately summed up in this: champion the planet, challenge world reality, such potency as possible, given the crucial key. Rise up now with cosmic arms against this troubled sea, and know yourself far greater than you ever dreamt yourself to be. I can be reached here. Serious only. Please, need reply. Well, let me end with a couple images. Right? This is the nature of the abyss in the Crowley tradition. In the I Ching, here's an I Ching, it says that basically, I wish you were in my vision, because I'm going to come over there in essence, it behooves one, to be able to cross this great water and find oneself upon that other shore. That other shore. Then and only then is there great good fortune. All right? And that's also the same thing as the Alice's looking glass. My reflection does this. My reflection does that. Whoa. Right? And you have the image in Arabia. This is a beautiful one of oases, right? And so you see a vast desert. Well, the desert is lifeless, and there's life there, and life there, and life there. You can see the representation of that. And the only thing that can get you across this desert is Isis, your soul, symbolized by the camel. And so his father says, well, you cross this great desert to find yourself in this oasis, right? And if other travelers who are capable of crossing this great desert continue to cross these deserts to find themselves in other oases, and if we spill water as we go, the desert will flower, and all these oases will dissolve into paradise. I think there's a couple other images. Maybe the one that's... No, forget it. That's enough, I would say. Any questions? In sailor fashion.
So I have a question for you, Pan.
Mm-hmm.
How come you used to wear the Mickey Mouse ears and the nose? What did that symbolize?
Had a lot of cosmic sort of nuances to it. One, it was a low form of ceremonial magic to attract attention. But I think as the mouse, it's not quite the right attention I was actually hoping to attract, And so it gave it a little bit of darkness there. There was a lot going on with that in terms of an archetype. But at one time I saw an image, my vision for the world is what I would call Disney's world. And, in that case it would be like take and restore Africa land and Arabia land and everything to its original pristine purity, and it would be owned and operated by the entire Mickey Mouse Club of Humanity, fair shares all the way down the line. And in Disney's world, all you got to do is maybe work 3 days a week, and you get to go ahead and enjoy the attractions. And I think that would be ideal. In other words, the thing I'm imagining, imagine George Bush, right? I probably can't do this, but imagine him coming out, right, during the next State of the Nation or speech or whatever, and he's saying, well, we've been giving it some thought here, and we decided that, we know what would probably tickle you all would be, a utopia. And so what we've done is we, decided that, you'd like that, wouldn't you? Anyway, we decided we'd take and we got 5 utopian designers together, and we did, with the means that we have at hand, and we decided we could construct, this, that, or the other, and what we want to do is put these designs up in front of you all, and let you go ahead and take a look at them and see which one you like the most. And if you want to go ahead and debate all this and put this with that and everything in, come up with a fine one, and just simply say, make it so. All right? And, of course, in Disney's world, there's always those who deserve or want more than their fair share. And I think, well, you got to take it into account. So I think in Disney's world, we would call that Disney staff, right? So Disney staff. Anyway, those who can contribute a greater good to the greater whole, and there are a lot of ways to do that. If it's a magnificent contribution, well, then hell, you're welcome to the rare rewards in the world. Not everyone can live in King Ludwig's gaudy little summer palace. Anyway, that's my image of Disney's world. So Disney, right, is a creator. And what he does is he basically, projects or animates or whatever you want to call it, this little figure down into the world of human beings. And of course it's not quite human. It's not quite fantasy. Well, it's a combination of both. Little ears, a mouse, and a tail, right? And so then in this entity basically somehow however it comes around, there's a club that's created. And so the song goes, who's the leader of the club that's made for you and me? Jesuschrist. So that's the magical child of Walt Disney. You see, he was supposed to be able to start the club that gets this thing going, so the fulfilled fantasy is, of course, Disney's world as we would have it, adults, of course, included. So, where was I? So, an animated character.
Good. So, around 1991, I think it was, or February 91, I think, I moved from Santa Cruz to San Francisco, and I started to see you up in the Haight District. What led you from Santa Cruz to San Francisco at that period? Because as the viewers have already seen and heard, I've already talked about why I went. Why did you go?
Well, we missed each other in Berkeley, right? But in when
were you in Berkeley?
I was in Berkeley in 1974.
Okay, yeah, we missed each other.
Or, yeah, it was 1974. Oh, no, excuse me, 1984.
Okay. Yeah, we
I
missed
think
each
I was
other
in
by
there
about
on
2
and off all
years.
along the way, and 74 probably as well. But see, here's a little bit of history of something, right? You know, I'm obviously a lunatic, but at the age of 26, I was recognized for the very first time. And it was a fascinating experience because I saw the psychiatrist, right? I was living with the Angels of Light. You know who the Angels of Light are? Right? Ex-coquettes of New York. Now the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. You've heard of none of the above? I'm all of the below. Anyway, they decided that I should be in the club, which was then called ATD. And it was called Aid to the Totally Disabled, but of course we called it Aid to the Totally Divine. And they rushed me down in to see a psychiatrist because they thought I should be a member of this august society. And some of the finest intelligences I've ever met were in that club. Now we call it Silver Star Incorporated, SSI, right? So I'm the head of the order, by the way. The OCO is nothing but the damn Mickey Mouse Club fault. I'm concerned with something. So, anyway, I told the psychiatrist, you know, I'm on the planet about my father's business. I could use a little assistance here. And he said, explain yourself, and I did. And this was at the age of 26. And when I was done, he was amazed because he had studied metaphysics. Couldn't possibly qualify me as not quite right because everything I had said made absolutely perfect sense. Of course, that was a revelation of basically who I am. So it began there, all right. And then in 3 years later, I did actually have a private jet waning. I was pitted by a friend of the Pope's, basically, the wife of a man who decides the amounts of loans made in third world countries in Switzerland of all places. Anyway, a personal friend of the Pope's, and I was pitted, you know, against this guy who had studied years earlier to be a Jesuit priest, and the offer was if I could convince him as an intellectual, right, I could convince her husband and I would get a private audience with the pontiff. And so I said, okay, Your Honor, and did that, and private jet waning, should I succeed, we're on our way. And I was at the age of 30, and I blew myself away because this man turned to her and said, yes, I would accept this man as Jesus Christ. Blew my mind. I cracked the door and I thought, whoa. And then, so in Berkeley, right, this is 1984, I ended up being recognized by a bishop of the Greek Orthodox Church. So we began to lay a small world fortune at my feet, and this entity had plans. Of course, everyone's a personality and a character, and this, I basically verified this individual's reality. I called the editor of the New York Times. I called the editor of the New York Star, and got all the information I needed. Anyway, before we were done, I met the mafia. Whoa, big time. I learned a lot. Before we were done, I found myself, I wanted to test this man before going too far with him. And before I was done, as a result of this test, I found myself surrounded by Sicilians in this man's serene, smiling presence and being viciously pistol whipped and almost killed. I think that's an interesting, that doesn't happen to every Messianic. I think that's an interesting insight, and this can be verified. There were witnesses. A couple were with me. I then went and I made a bid in Berkeley, and it was a miserable bid because I've got to try. I'm going to go bypass the institutions, forget the church and all that. Let's talk directly to the people. Let's create something here. And couldn't move anything off the ground. Well, I'm an introvert. You know, it's not easy for me to push this stuff all the way out there all the time. But I decided, okay, I'll have to try other grounds, and I went to Santa Cruz. And that's when I met, you know, Clay, as you know. And Clay did do me the honor of saying, you know, that there are a lot of Messianics making claims that sound infuriate, signifying little. But as far as this relationship or experience with me, that he had to say that my initiation vastly outstripped his own. And I could be who and what I claimed to be. And I tried to get him aboard and a few others aboard anyways. He wrote, what's her name? Phyllis, right? And it was in, I guess, head of the order, so to speak, and said, you know, well, what about this? You know, I think I've met the child. And she just wrote back and said, tell him to go fry himself. Well, that affected Clay, and I thought, well, that pussy, excuse my language. Anyway, you know, it's like, well, that changed everything, see? But we were trying in that timing, and he was basically wrote about it. Yeah, we were networking, we were ready to get something moving, but again, it didn't quite come to pass. And so then I also had a government bid that I first began to institute there, which was a fascinating thing. And I think anyone who's really serious about changing the government would really like to see this. So anyway, I went on into San Francisco, and it seemed like within a few months, not months, excuse me, a few days, within a week I think, or a week or so, somehow or another there was something the universe was really up to. We decided that let's go for a trial run here. And the next thing I know, I'm surrounded by a number of people who I basically captured, I suppose you could say, or intrigued, and got even commit toward an endeavor. And among those, there was one was George Penter, who was internationally acclaimed European filmmaker, worked with Francis Ford Coppola, developed Zoetrope Studios. And so this is what I'm doing in San Francisco. And then one was Al Gore Science Advisor's best friend and noted activist, David Kowalski. Anyway, he took the EPA down to the Farallon Islands and showed them where toxic, radioactive shit was dumped and all that other stuff. And I guess the CIA stepped in and scared him and his wife half to death. But he was an activist and poet laureate of Berkeley, according to Eldridge Cleaver of the United States. Dr. Changelove, who was Timothy Leary's godson, right, noted editor at the time. And my most favorite, well, there's also a journalist from BBC Channel 4, London, and my favorite was Madeleine Muir. She was 3 times Oscar nominated for her documentary work on the plight of the homeless, toxic dumping in Indian reservations, things like that. Genuine sweetheart from the Muir family. And she used to be an on-the-air newscaster in Washington, D.C. And so what we're going to do, and this wasn't quite my idea anyway, we were geared toward an event on Easter Day, which was to parade me down from the Haight on a legal permit. We talked to Pablo, with the Haight Street Fairs. He sort of set us up in that direction. Costing $5,000, and still not my idea. On, well, I won't tell you about the float. Anyway, it was all to take me down into the heart of the Civic Center, and then guaranteed national coverage by Madeleine. And the fellow from BBC Channel 4 said, if we get this moving, we could have people rise and rally with us in Europe for the occasion. So it was all making a move together. We were negotiating with, like I said, the Bacchanal Cabal, the Cacophony Society, and I was thinking, well, San Jose Gnostic Institute, you name them, and trying to get them to go ahead and do cameo performances in the halting procession of our play, a legal pageant down through the city, and to deliver me to the microphone. And the whole thing was figured out as art. Nobody really knew the metaphysics of it. And so through artistic license, I had convinced everyone, let's do this in peace. And I do have a plan for the world. It can be a revolution. We can perform a world revolution as a theatrical endeavor, using a higher art form than does exist in the world today. And that's fascinating. And transcendent art form, that would be something to look into anyway. What you want to do, of course, is get the entire world's attention. It's provocative or controversial enough. It's a good theater. And then if you get everyone's attention, it's like a Beauty and Beast subterfuge, perhaps, but then you boom. And what you want to do is open up dialogue or dialectic with the collective, and if you've got something genuinely valuable to say, that would just change absolutely everything, does it make a difference? Well, then this would be the thing to do it. Well, this is a setup toward that, and they didn't know I had greater ambitions. I just wanted an introduction, And the whole thing was geared on the fact that as Jesus Christ, that I would like to speak to the Pope, and this is what this is all about publicly. The issue is that he has taken a stance on abortion. Him and his predecessors, the church itself, and the proprietorship of women's bodies, how that doesn't quite go over. Anyway, and that is a sin against the Holy Ghost to commit abortion, etc. And I would like to point out to the pontiff, publicly speaking, well, I could go into great detail in this respect, that, well, I'm thinking of something I should add also to this, but that when he, there's not one art collection in the Vatican alone worth $100 billion, and boy, let's not go into what is in the basement. Not to mention land holdings, and the IOR as the bank, Vatican Bank, and the investments in the war machine, and the money that's being laundered, fuck the wealth that we're talking about here. This man has proven that he can be in every country where there are children starving to death, and he does there exhort in the name of all that's holy, do something for the less fortunate in your midst. And then he goes back to his gold-plated bicycle, his full art collection and all that other stuff. But yet, he's in the presence. He's shown that he can be in the presence of children who are starving to death. And that entity is in a position, as a servant of Christ, to go ahead, and provide these children absolutely everything. And if you're worried about the population problem, there's an answer to that too. We can go into that sometime. Provide these children everything. Give them everything. and if he turns his back on that child, and goes back and he walks away from that child, and it dies, and that child dies a slow, horrible death, spiritually speaking, is that not even a crueler form of abortion? And when we want to get down to brass tacks, we could very well say that, who was it that said, at least of these my children, you find me, right? And you know what you're going to face if you're a Christian on Judgment Day, if you don't acknowledge this ultimate reality? Anyway, I am as one who has left my house in charge of the servant and told the porter to watch. He carries the key to my estate, and I've taken a long journey. Woe if I come back and find the porter sleeping. And look at the fucking mess you made of my ultimate, I could say if you judge an entity by its works, well then I'm guilty, I guess, of 100 million murders in my name. Of what it is that spawned as a result of what it is that took over. Yes, the very elect have been deceived. In terms of ultimate reality. All right, here's the deal. Jung says, and I love the entity, says that if you're going to change the nature, and here's what the left doesn't understand. If you've got a revolutionary bent in there anywhere at all, and you're really just frustrated because you can't seem to break through anywhere, try to comprehend this. In the undiscovered self, Jung says, tiny treatise, he rages, fumes. He says, if you want to know, you got to realize what kind of a predicament you're in, and boy, you're in a solid predicament here. And if you want to blame anything, you can blame Christendom and for its centuries of conditioning upon the human gestalt, the human nature. You know what I mean? In terms of, oh, I could go into that in depth. Anyway, well, yeah, you got God, right? Then you got the epitome of supreme good, the epitome of supreme evil, and then there's the book, then there's the church, the priest, or whatever you want to call it, and then there's you. In this scheme of things, what in the hell can you hope to do? It's a done deal, isn't it? I mean, what role do you play? And this is all you can basically do, and this is all everyone is doing, whatever God wills. All right? So, something's been missed here. In fact, if you're a Christian and not the Christ, you failed. You're not going to be able to, he says, you're going to have to, if you're going to change the nature of the collective consciousness, you're not going to like this, but you're going to have to, know your audience, and cutting across all the boundaries in the Western world, basically your audience is primarily Christian, a very superstitious lot. They don't reflect that much. So good luck with that, because you're not going to change a thing, my friend, if you can't learn or find some way to speak to them in a language that they understand. Or at least a symbolic system that they've espoused, because they obviously don't understand it. The left can't seem to contemplate that. How can you go about doing that? Jung said, oh, well, the only thing that would probably make that possible is if you could find a creature that's similar to the Christian creature, but from a different origin, so that we could raise this up in front of Christians and give them something to reflect upon. But he himself couldn't find this creature. How much trolling was that creature? I found that creature. Anyway, that's basically what's required. In other words, you're going to have to be able to reach this aspect of this world in order if you're going to make that difference, and I have found a way to communicate that. In other words, a way to actually explain, ultimately, or define, let's say, the terms, so that they can be understood by everyone. So anyway, what happened in that event in San Francisco was that this is all that was about to happen. I figure I'd get my debut out of that one, and I've got greater plans going on from there, but as a result of that, basically what happened is just as all this was coming together toward Easter Day of 1991, also Fool's Day, by the way, we were given complete license, the Gulf War broke out, first Gulf War broke out. And this wasn't an easy thing to put together, this is very subtle stuff, there's a lot of coercion on my part, like a conscience to bringing this thing together to show the effectiveness of what might transpire. The great good it might do as far as waking up the world and getting it talking about something important. But when that Gulf War broke out, the whole city went into a fucking frenzy. Excuse my language, my friend. Broke out into a frenzy, and everything came undone. Suddenly that became a priority. And I realized that Kairos was saying, at least to me at that time, not yet. Time isn't quite right. I was really disappointed in that, because I thought, well, what really the world wasn't quite aware of what it just, sorry about the Gulf War, but the world wasn't quite really aware of what it was about to experience there. And so I then took the advice of George Penner, and he says, don't do it this way. Try to more or less manipulate your audience into doing something with you so you can get your shot. Your quest is just to find one other individual who has heart and head together, a real intelligent entity, and completely reach them, have them completely understand what it is that I brought to the world. I bring to the world a fire. Behold, I bring fire to the world, and I guard it until it is on fire. And then go from there. And my quest in the 16 years since has been just to find, like Diogenes movie star, who I've been knocking on doors. I've written thousands of letters, and I've knocked on almost every door in this community. And you know what? You're the first one here. At least give me a shot, even if you don't want to hear what it is ultimately I've got to say. You enigma, you. Anyway, I've spent this time since 7 years here. And boy, you name it, Marty Bloom, nobody wants to hear from me. Hi, goes to Christ here, And long letters, personal stuff, really animated. Everything I say seems to make sense. It's just beyond everyone's belief in terms of comprehension. I'm dead in the water as soon as they make a claim, you know what I mean? No one believes there is such a thing as anything that I'm claiming. And that's the shibboleth. Is it shibboleth? So, I have in this time here, to that little thing I told you about, I have sharpened my Kabbalistic talents, you know what I mean? I could give Lurian or Luzada a run for their money. I know their secret, and I have comprehended ultimately the Christian message completely, and I have found, and I was surprised to find it, because, the Gospel of Thomas is my word, and then it was distorted, but at least it's recognized by the finest Christian scholars in the world as being the horse's mouth. Everything that follows after that, miracles and stuff like that, which lift me far beyond the reach of your ultimate divine being. And that's why Crowley comes into play here, because essentially I can't stand up against my own myth in this world, being Christ. And so I'm going to kill myself as Christ, more or less. And I come into the world as a magical child of Aleister Crowley, and you don't know what kind of mileage I can get out of that. At least I have a mythos that can take on a mythos, you might say. And I'm wondering who everyone would root for. Which, if you were a major star, which role would you rather play? Anyway, all this is a divinely appointed, I would say, absolutely perfect setup if anyone's interested in seeing the entire thing. So the thing is that I'm saying that I could do it right now if you want. I can show you what I would say to Christians, and it will stop them in their tracks and make them face the reality of what it is they're messing with. And in that realization, they're going to see that they've missed the mark a long, long time ago, and completely missed the mark. And in this, there is metamorphosis. In this, there is a transformation. In this, there is magic. In this, there is supernatural. In this, there is fun wonder. And that's what we need, a little more awe in the world about who we ultimately are. If only we could see ourselves for who we truly are. Do you want to hear those three? You want to hear this Christian scripture? I could do it in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Or we'll leave that out and save it for dessert. You know what I mean? Because if you want to know how we're going to change this nature of this collective consciousness, I can show you how to do that. And
so people will contact you and you'll show them?
Oh yes. But it's a private audience. And I'll say if they're elsewhere, I'm a poor entity as far as earthly things and possessions are concerned. Everything I own basically is what I carry with me. If they want me from afar, I'll try to get there. Have key, will travel. You know what I mean? But in other words, you keep that in mind. I hope it's worth going out of their way for them checking out, and whatever that takes. If they want to get me there, or they want to come here. I'm open for the experience at any time. It's going to be quite an experience, I'll tell you. You have to be ready to have your reality completely tested, in essence. And forgive me for saying this, but it's like taking you apart and examining you, and then figuring out where you may have left off, and then quickening you from there, and to the final conclusion. And there is one ultimate conclusion. Just as Father says, truth has to be identical with reality. Whatever this is, It has to correspond to this, or it's just in your imagination. And so far, everyone's reality seems to miss the mark in corresponding to this. And so it is this that will be seen differently. Well, there's also the possibility of producing this key in terms of an actual documentary complete. And I would do that. And quote all the masters by the time I'm done. I'm saying it's the most invaluable piece of information in the entire history of humankind. It's in context. It's mythos, ultimately. It's the sword, the stone, the grail, the elixir, the paradigm, whatever you want to call it. The Archimedean fulcrum is the way I see it. If you'd like to leverage this world into another reality, I think it's all a matter of kismet.